Welcome to BT Express, the morning tea with Billy T. And I have a living legend here with me today. Now, he's humble about it, but listen, I know when I was coming up through the game of operational excellence and learning it, there are certain people you look up to, and also there's certain people that are willing to help you. You were one of those that always helped me. And you were one to help me as I transitioned because I didn't know operational excellence. I thought it was really too focused. I thought 5S, Lean, Kaizen events, they were tools. Gentlemen like yourself were pioneers in the game. But before we get started, Mr. Doug Carlberg, I'd like you to tell the audience a little about yourself, your companies, and some of the things you've seen in operational excellence at a high level. Give this plant your introduction.
Well, a little bit. Doug Carlberg, I've been in, besides being in the military, I've been started off at General Electric Company in their management training program. I ended up initially in engineering and then realized that I had a problem down in the factory. Something I designed didn't work. Go figure. So my boss sent me down to fix it. I got down there in the factory and I said, wow, this is a different world. So I applied for the GE Management Training Program, which was like getting a master's in industrial engineering. 4 assignments. I was in 3 different locations, 6 months assignments with a whole bunch of coursework in between. So that gave me my basis. And with that, GE back then was a little bit like IBM. You know what IBM stands for?
What's that?
I've been moved. Okay. So every 2 years, I basically get a list of like 2 to 3 sites, and then I'd go interview and then pick one of the ones I wanted to go to for my next assignment. And then about 13 years later, out of the blue, I was sitting and looking at a magazine, and they had this job opening at Hughes, which was back then owned by the Howard Hughes Foundation in Tucson, Arizona. And I said, I think I'll just apply for that and see where it goes. And I got one of my engineering degrees from the University of Arizona, so if nothing else, I'll go party with a bunch of my friends that I graduated from high school with. So that was my motivation to go do it. Lo and behold, I got the job. And the job back then, I mean, at GE, I learned quality circles. I learned Crosby. I learned a lot about Deming, which was very big at GE. And when I got over there, they recruited me to head up their industrial modernization program, which was funded by the Air Force to basically modernize their AMRAAM missile factory. And eventually I got picked up to hire a bunch of consultants to go out and modernize 40 of their suppliers for the AMRAAM missile. So that gave me a lot of my first initiative on Lean. I got up with Dan Shunk, Professor Dan Shunk at Arizona State, and back then we developed something called IDEF models. Today, they're known as value stream mapping, and we didn't know that at the time. So I kind of learned the hard way and basically dealt with Dan a lot. And by the way, Dan's on the Western Board today for basically AME.
Wait, I want to pause for a second. And so as you're describing this, I want you to pick back up when you're talking AME because you are part of the evolution of operational.
Oh, yeah.
Right? You've been with Doc Hall,
yeah.
the legend. So you were part of the evolution. Is that correct?
That's correct. I started, well, not quite at the beginning. I'm not that old, but I got there as quick as I could. Okay, so initially there was Mac McCullum, Doc Hall, who was a professor, Nick Edwards were the 3 that originally formed AME, what it is today. That's the Association of Manufacturing Excellence. Mm-hmm. And Doc Hall recently passed away. He was the last one that was still living. Nick Edwards passed away 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. So a lot of great people. Matter of fact, I went to a funeral just recently for the person that actually established the Shingo Prize, which is Professor Ross Robson, that early on in the 90s realized that there was a better way to really be competitive here in North America, and that's when the Shingo Prize was formed out of Utah State University, Huntsman School of Business. And today, I'm still very active, and I know you are, Billy, are still very active with the Shingo Prize, along with the Association of Manufacturing Excellence.
But when I say that, and I always say facts, I speak with facts. You're one of, there's not many that's been a part of both boards at the same time, AME and the Shingo Prize. Is that correct?
Well, that's correct. I mean, the other person that's very active on both of them is Larry Anderson, and I'll be doing a podcast with him shortly for my podcast series with the San Antonio Manufacturers Association. So I'm looking forward to with that with Larry. Larry's coming in town, but
Wait a minute. By the way, I don't miss by the chance, and also another living legend that touched my life. So we'll get back to Larry because
Larry,
he's actually touched my life as well.
Well, and Larry and I both, little known fact, but both Larry and I went through the General Electric Management Training Program. So,
okay, I didn't know that.
We've had a lot of commonality and a lot of the same journey over the years. Okay. So it's what you can put in your toolbox and what you can fast forward and help other people with.
I look at you two gentlemen differently. You've got consultants, and you've got those that have wrote the books.
Oh, yeah.
But you two have lived it.
Day in and day out. We've had to make it happen. We've had to turn it around. Both of us are examiners for both programs. We're both senior examiners. So we'll go in and wear our Shingo hat to look at some of the best class companies around the world with Shingo. With the Association of Manufacturing, for the most part, it's companies here in North America.
You've actually come to some of my plants.
Well, I've been in more than one.
Oh, okay.
And the last one I went to was your plant that was making the tires for the NASCAR cars, and I went in with a great team on that. And I think Larry and Bill Baker on that audit. So we had 3 senior examiners. That's the first time we ever went into a site with 3 senior examiners. And you guys got an audit like nobody else had ever seen before because you had some really a lot of years of experience. And that plant just did amazing. Which is the oldest. Which would amaze me. Yeah. It's the oldest plant in the system.
Yes. Oldest building,
and then some of the equipment was some of the original equipment for making tires that they had modified.
That's right.
And the Esprit de Corps with the union, and there was so much pride in what they did, the product they made, and the fact that they were even applying for the award and the recognition.
And one of the things as I look at you, what marvels me. And one, I wanted you to be on the podcast and I always say give the flowers, your impact on operational excellence. And as you actually own your own company, you started it. You became one of the leaders in that industry. Tell me a little about how did you take that experience from GE and that experience growing up and in operational excellence and now cascading that or rolling that over into your own personal company?
Well, and actually and then I got recruited out of Hughes to go work for Harris Corporation. And at the time I was recruited in, and I knew it was either we were going to turn that division around, which was the worst division in Harris Corporation, to the best division, or we were going to clean it up to sell it, and one or the other. And I took on the challenge, and I got recruited at the time from the individual that actually was heading out their whole lean initiative at the corporate level. When I interviewed at corporate, little did I know he was going to be my boss because they replaced the plant manager. And I can remember when I took the job, I was actually going to be moving out in the Bay Area up to San Jose where the sector headquarters was. And he calls me up, and I was in Austin, Texas at the time. And he says, "Doug, we have a problem." And I'm going, I haven't even started yet. What's this problem? He says, the plant manager had just resigned in San Antonio, and I need you to come fix that problem and hire a replacement. Well, I got down there, and I went, what a mess, because they were trying to implement lean, but they didn't really understand how to do it. They actually looked at what they sold the year before. This was a highly engineered product, no two alike. But they were looking at what they sold the year before, and they had Kanban set up, which they couldn't use. Their production facility was they were like 6 to 9 months late on deliveries.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. They weren't making any money. They implemented team-based management. They get rid of all the supervisors. And then at the same time, they turn around and after a year, the team could vote who they wanted to be their team lead. Well, obviously, somebody that was pushing and getting results.
Absolutely. That's why I smile.
It didn't get voted in.
That's right.
So they had a morale problem and a performance issue. So, and I had to find the tools to figure all that out and quick.
So how did you do that? What were some of the things you did to get to foster the turnaround?
Well, here again, I had a boss that believed in me and just let me run with it.
Uh-huh.
So a lot of it was training and education, and basically understanding the Toyota production system at the time, and reestablishing the principles and the training. We had to do a lot of training. And I reached out to organizations like the Association of Manufacturing to get the training, to contact with people that I could help bring it in. And we did get help out of corporate, Harris Corporation. But here again, I had other sites besides San Antonio that had issues. Mm-hmm. But the one in San Antonio had the youngest workforce, and they didn't realize they couldn't do it. They just, we educated them. We started off with Myers-Briggs training.
I remember that. I went through that.
Personality types. And even today at the company that I bought, we've kept that as a key thing. The 16 different personality types is key for diversity and to really make sure. I had one of the worst teams I can remember back at Harris that wasn't performing. It was at the final end of the factory, which was my bottleneck. So when they did their Myers-Briggs, 80% of them all had the same Myers-Briggs. They couldn't think outside the box. So we did some promotions and some reorganizations and restructuring and spent a little time training them. And lo and behold, we broke the bottleneck.
I want to get your perspective on something. And you've had to build teams, and you just described turning teams. And I was asked this question recently about building teams. And I said there's 3 C's when you're building a team. One is character.
That's right.
The second one is capability, and then chemistry. Now, I flipped the 2 bottom ones, but the first one is always the first one, character. What do you look at when you go when to hire someone? As a leader, you're building these transformational teams because you can't go in and replace everybody. No. And sometimes the smartest person can destroy the environment.
And sometimes the smartest person isn't the person you want to have lead. I mean, you've got to have somebody that has credibility. They're going to do what they say they're going to do. At M2 Global, my company that I owned for 23 years, I've got 23%, 24% former military because they know what it's all about, showing up in the morning and getting the mission done every day. If I could get 100% military in that business, I would. They're the best resource I've ever done. And then the other thing is I've done a lot of work with internships with the universities and getting bright kids in there. And you take the brightest and you hire them. If the ones that really shine, you figure out how to bring them back into your business.
So in your company, it thrived. I talk to you from time to time. What were your greatest lessons on building and sustaining performance in your company?
Well, when an example right off the bat, when I started Myers-Briggs, I could see a lot of back pressure on it. So the first one I did with Myers-Briggs, and I brought the trainer in, and we did my executive team. And I put that on my team board out, and I established team boards for all the teams so we could be very visual. And my Myers-Briggs was the first one that went up. And then with an all-hands meeting, then I kind of explained what the whole journey was going to be and what Myers-Briggs was going to be and what we're going to do. And then we created this whole training system along with Myers-Briggs to do it. And they had to come up with they had to identify who their customers were, what their product was, and who their suppliers were. And it was a big opening Big surprise that some of their suppliers were internal, which were some of their worst suppliers. But on the other end, some of their customers was not the end customer, but it was the next product line within the factory. So there's a lot of different techniques to get out there, but we created team shirts. So once they went through all of this training and they created their mission and their statement and how it fit into their strategic plan, they get a team shirt. And then when I finally left Harris, I think I had 40 team shirts in my closet. So every time I was in town because I had multiple plants. So when I'd come in town, if there was a team meeting, I'd wear that shirt that day. But the other thing is, everybody else in the factory went, they got shirts. How do I get shirts?
I know that. I've lived that one. I lived that one. I'm interested to know from your perspective. You think of people's mentors, and right? You think of Bill Belichick, Nick Saban, the great coaches. They had to have mentors, and now everybody looks up to them for winning all the Super Bowls. Yeah. Who were your mentors?
It started very early on at Harris Corporation. A guy named Bob Toll. He's still alive today. He's living up in Ogden, Utah, and he's in his 80s. And actually, when I was having trouble with Harris, he was retired from GE. I brought him back to actually help fix my supply chain issue. But I still contact with him today. But he basically encouraged me and kind of pushed me in the right directions. It took me underneath his wing. And I only worked for him first because then I started moving around with GE, and he went another different direction than I did. But I always kept in touch with him because he really got me going. And then I go forward a little bit. The other one that really had a major influence with me is when I went to Howard Hughes, or Hughes Aircraft Company. It was owned by the Howard Hughes Medical Foundation at the time. And I had a guy like Jack Markle, and they brought me in to run their industrial modernization programs there, and they recruited me out of GE. But he basically said, Doug, I know nothing about this thing. We hired you. You just need to figure this thing out, and we need to go after these government contracts to get this funded. And it was an internal, basically consulting group to help at the time retool and design the factory of the future for the AMRAAM missile. Because they were competing with Raytheon, and they had the design program, but at the end, both companies were to compete for the production, and I helped do that. And I was so successful with that the government came back to Hughes and asked me if I could create a consulting group to do it for 40 of the suppliers on the AMRAAM missile to reduce the costs, which I did. I went out and hired and trained a bunch of people. But to do that, I reached out to Arizona State and Dr. Dan Shunk, and he came in and really, and he was the chair for the industrial engineering department at Arizona State. And I was in Tucson, where University of Arizona is. And by the way, I've got a degree in aeronautical and mechanical engineering from there. But I researched one of the best industrial engineering schools at the time was Arizona State. So I reached out and used them for a lot of the training.
So hearing that, I want to take you back, and I want you to have a conversation with 35-year-old Doug. Knowing what you know now, what advice would you give that young man on his lean leadership journey? Well,
first of all, you need to listen. And I had to learn how to listen because I thought I had all the answers, and I didn't. So it's learning and seeing, going to the Gemba, and education, learning new tools in your toolbox. And not all the tools work, so, and listening to other people. And there were a lot of people out there that I'd listened to, like Ross Robson from the Shingo Prize, who gave me a lot of guidance. I ran into George Cohencyker. George was another one. So if you kind of go back and look at a lot of the people that you and I know, we were all trying to figure it out at the time. So we're just comparing notes. So it was the benchmarking and the communication and going back and forth. And I got that through the Association of Manufacturing Excellence, and eventually through Shingo.
Yes. Yeah. And so now you sold your company. and now you have a consulting group.
Yeah, Carlberg Consulting Group, and I've got a lot of the people that are on there, like Larry Anderson, and I had Ross Robson, who just recently passed away, who originally formed and established the Shingo Prize, was on there, and I've got actually Dan Shunk's on there, and a lot of the guys that are around forever that really would like to go forward and help other companies. But I've got some other younger guys coming up that are learning from us old guys. Mm-hmm. So there's about 10 of us. We're having fun. It's all about having
the old guys, right? Y'all, the seasoned guys.
Well, yeah, I call myself the old dude. I'm like Bruce Hamilton.
Yeah, but toast guy.
But the toast guy. But yeah, I guess you could say we're seasoned. Mm-hmm. You know.
My last question for you, and it's something that I used to ask my kids as well. And you think about it, I'm going to take you back even further because people listening to this show, right? It's a broad demographic.
Oh, yeah.
But I get reached out to now from the Instagrammers, the TikTokers, and those are the ones that stop me the most when I'm out talking. And their questions around what gave me the courage. What gave me the courage to take this? So I'm going to ask the question differently. And I'm thinking about, as you're coming through now, that something that you didn't move forward on, you didn't do. And if you had a chance to reflect, what would you attempt to do now? What would you do if you were not afraid back then? So the question is, what would you do if you were not afraid?
Well, and I guess one of the things that for my success, I was willing to take the risk, and maybe at the time I was single, it was a little easier to do it. If I was married, had kids, maybe I wouldn't have taken as many risks as I did. Mm-hmm. But I was willing to jump into areas that I had no experience with at all. Mm-hmm. But I know I wasn't the brightest kid in college. I was kind of a C and B student. I wasn't an A student. But I knew I was going to work harder than anybody else to learn. Mm-hmm. And it's just spending the time, learning what you've got to do, and asking a lot of questions. There's no such thing as a dumb question, because I've asked a lot of dumb questions in my career. Because it's a learning process.
That's really to ask the question. My greatest mentors today are my kids.
You know,
right? They give me a different perspective.
Oh, I know.
Of the now.
Yeah, and my wife and I don't have any kids. We got married late, but it's our nieces and our nephews that keep us on our toes.
Absolutely. Well, how do people get in contact with you if they want to reach out to you and Carlberg Consulting? What's the best way to reach out to you?
It's Douglas at carlbergcg.com. And the website's exactly the same thing, www.carlbergcg.com.
Okay. And what about social media? LinkedIn?
I've got a LinkedIn out there too. So,
okay. All right.
And I try to get. I'll be getting podcast up on there.
Okay.
And I try to put out something, 2 or 3 things on my LinkedIn on a monthly basis. Interesting things that are coming up, or things that people might want to take attention to, like reading your book.
Okay.
All right. LinkedIn XL. I love that book.
Yeah.
So I've got a signed copy from you, and I think
absolutely.
I think it's a great book. It's a great learning curve. And I just recently, somebody called me up and let me know, that book is on back order right now at Amazon, so it's really selling well. So they were asking me if I had an extra copy of it. I said no, I only have one, but they've got theirs on order, so it'll be coming in.
Well, thank you, and thank you for being on the show. You've been an impact on me.
And you've been an impact on me, Billy.
I'll tell you, we joked and said that's my brother from another mother, and for over 15 years, we've both been a part of both AME, Association of Manufacturing Excellence, as well as Shingo.
Yeah, there's only a few of us that.
There's only a few of us.
That do that.
There's only a few of us that embraces operational excellence. So I want to thank you for coming on,
and I want to thank you for inviting me. This I've had fun.
I hope you enjoy this dose of BT Express, the morning tea with Billy T and Mr. Doug Carlberg. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you, Billy.
All right. Thank you. Tune in for the next episode and get your dose of the morning tea with Billy T.